Hey everybody, welcome. We are here for another one of our Becoming Series events. I want to thank everyone for joining another session of our Becoming Series where we come together to learn about all of the different careers in energy efficiency. We're really grateful to the two sponsors who make the series possible, and that's Natural Resources Canada and Electricity Human Resources Canada. Both of those sponsors are really key in growing the Canadian energy efficiency workforce, and we couldn't do this without them. The Becoming series is where we get to meet leaders in the sector, hear the story of how they got started, what skills are important for their role, and any advice that they have for people who are looking to follow in their footsteps. And this month, we actually have two speakers, and they're both named Steve, so you actually only have to remember one name. They're going to tell their story of starting a business together and recognizing the exciting opportunity that there is in energy efficient insulation. Before we dive into things, there's a few things I want to take note of. We always start our events with a land acknowledgement. Land acknowledgements are something we don't want to just do out of habit, but with a really clear intention. We do it to position ourselves and to provide meaningful and thankful acknowledgement to the Inuit, First Nations, and Métis communities whose land we occupy. So I acknowledge that I currently live, gather, work, and organize on the traditional and unceded territories of the Algonquin Nation. Please feel encouraged to share your own thoughts and land acknowledgements in the chat if that's something you're comfortable doing. We're going to be recording tonight's event, so you'll be able to go back and review anything that you miss. We have a hard cutoff time at 5:45, so that is where we shut things down no matter what. The last half of this event will be entirely for Q&A. So if you have questions that come up throughout the presentation, at the bottom of your screen, you're going to see a Q&A box. So you can open that up, put your questions in. You can vote the ones that you want to see answered, and they'll go to the top of the list. And last but not least, introducing our speakers this week, we have Steve Sponseller and Steve Kenny. They both began their careers in energy efficiency actually as energy auditors, with thousands of audits completed between them. After moving between industries, they learned about the house as a system approach and recognized an opportunity to grow a business and have an impact on people's energy use through insulation. I don't want to give too much away, so I'm going to pass it to you two to tell your story and get us started.
Awesome. Thanks, Kirsten, for the introduction. We're excited to be here and kind of share a little bit about our story and how we started insulation company and got in the insulation industry. First, I just kind of wanted to thank a friend of mine by the name of Andy Coburn, who kind of linked us up with Kirsten and Efficiency Canada to participate in the series. Andy is the Director of Education and Training for NAMA Canada, which is the North America Insulation Manufacturers Association. And we're going to talk a little bit later about a couple of cool things that Andy has put together that we found very useful when we were first starting out, and we'd recommend anyone looking to get into the energy efficiency and more specifically the insulation industry to take advantage of these resources that are available. So again, thank you, Andy, if you're watching, for kind of getting us introduced to Kirsten and the opportunity to be here today to tell our story. So pass it over to Steve here just to tell a little bit about himself and give you a little bit of a background story.
Thank you, Steve. So a bit about me. I'm obviously the co-owner of Net Zero Insulation, and I've been a certified energy auditor since 2016. I've done, like she said, over 4,000 audits myself. I was raised in London, Ontario, where I grew up. It's where I made all my friends. It's where I went to school, graduating from John Paul II, if we have any local London people here, and I pursued a degree in business at Western University. Before starting in the energy auditing sector, I had a wide range of jobs from sales and construction. I was a dietary aide at St. Joseph's Hospital. I worked doing deliveries for a while before the opportunity to become an energy advisor arose. Where that came from actually was my father, who worked in the heating and cooling industry for years, selling air conditioners and furnaces. He worked for Sears actually, which went under, and then he was looking for something to do before he retired. And he was approached by Amerispec of London to see if he was interested in doing energy audits. And while I was working in deliveries, my dad approached me and said, I think you could really get behind this. I think you're a quick learner. You could learn all the aspects you need, do the proper training, and I can see if his name was Dave, wants to hire you. So I thought it was time for me to get a job I could really hang my hat on and be proud of. So I went and did all of the training in Mississauga, passed all the necessary training files, and kind of once I got my certification, I was off and running, doing multiple audits a day, sometimes 5 or 6 a day, just to keep up with the demand. And running that hard all the time, 5 days a week, I approached Steve here to see if he was interested in taking some of the weight off of mine and my father's shoulders. So that's how me and Steve hooked up together professionally. We've been friends for 20 years, but I know he was looking to get into something new as well. So that's how we got together professionally. Not much too more about me, but let's see. Other than work, we both enjoy golfing whenever we can, but now that we're busy with our own new business and small families at home, that's going to take a bit of a back burner. But on a personal note, my wife just had a baby 2 days ago. So if you hear any crying in the background, it's not us, it's them. So I'll pass it over to Steve now to talk for a few minutes.
Thank you. So yeah, just a bit of my backstory. Growing up and as a teenager, when I first got into like my first jobs, I never imagined that I would be in a career in the construction industry. I always wanted to do something sports related, and golf was my main passion. And I spent most of my days as a kid growing up at the golf course, and eventually I decided that I was going to pursue a career in the golf industry. So after graduating high school, I was working at a local golf course and was able to pass the playing requirements to become a member of the PGA of Canada. And I went on working 5 years in Calgary at a private golf course there, teaching golf lessons to kids and adults and people of all different skill levels in golf. And I was there for 5 years and moved back to Ontario and worked 1 year at Glen Abbey in Oakville. And after 6 years of seasonal work in the golf industry, I decided that I was going to seek something new and something more like of a year-round job. So I wasn't really sure what it was going to be or where I was going to go. And it was like the winter, I was laid off, and a friend of mine had kind of asked me, he's like, well, what are you going to do? And he was working in ICI construction, which if you're not familiar with is industrial, commercial, and institutional construction. And he was a project manager there, and they were looking to hire a new laborer. So he asked me if I was interested, and I said, yeah, you know what, why not? And this was in 2016. So it's been a quick journey from there to where I am now in the construction industry, but I truly enjoyed doing what we do. And yeah, so after 4 years working in the ICI construction, we did all kinds of projects with the company that I was working for. The first one that I did was actually a federal parole office that we were building. And the last one that we were doing was a addition on a hospital. So it was kind of cool for me being kind of, I guess, green to the construction industry to work as the general contractor, where they would start with nothing and, you know, you'd end up with a completed project or a $10 million addition on a hospital. So I really enjoyed kind of seeing the fruits of the labor and everything come to fruition. And, you know, you can see the whole picture once it's done. They start there with basically a dirt field and end up with a hospital. It was pretty cool. So I really developed like a passion for building things and using my hands. And that's when I was doing the construction, and Steve came to me and said, hey, we need help with energy audits. I think, you know, you've been doing construction, you would be a good candidate to do this. So there's some exams that you have to pass to become an energy advisor. So I started studying for those and was able to pass them, became a certified energy advisor. And then after that, I was doing energy audits for about 4 or 5 years. And once we were doing the energy audits and kind of realized that the training and the hands-on experience from my construction labor and the energy advisor positions, we kind of just a light bulb went off and said, you know what, hey, why don't we see if we can take some of this knowledge and everything and then apply it to what actually gets done in the houses. So that's kind of where we are today and how we got here. It wasn't necessarily like growing up, we knew we were going to be construction workers. Definitely wasn't that way. So it's kind of a cool story on how we got here, I guess. But yeah, so we'll kind of get into a little bit more about our company and stuff.
So our kind of mission at Net Zero Insulation is we're able to help our customers achieve comfortable, healthy, and energy efficient homes, all while contributing to Canada's goal of achieving net zero emissions by 2050. If you follow any of the government's mandates and stuff like Trudeau came out with, I think it was last summer, about the Greener Homes Grant and having the goal of becoming net zero by 2050, there's a lot of work that has to be done. In our industry, there's many types of insulators, spray foam, new construction, industrial, and commercial, but our main focus is retrofitting existing homes, which we learned through the being energy advisors is there's a lot of grants available also through greener homes. So we focus our attention on those, but obviously the house as a system has a lot of different components. And our goal is to kind of, during our process, is inform the customer of all those scenarios in the home that can help make the home run more efficiently. So it's not just coming in, dumping installation and leaving. We really take a lot of time during our quotes and during our work to explain what we're going to do for them. So that's kind of our mission.
Okay. So, I mean, in order to help our customers make their houses more efficient, you kind of have to understand what goes into making a house efficient, or what makes a home energy efficient. And there's a little diagram here that we just wanted to share with you. And I'll just kind of go over some of the points of what makes a home energy efficient. Like airtight construction is one of them, air sealing, such as around your windows, doors, electrical outlets, vents, high performance or Energy Star equipment, furnace, air conditioner, water heaters, high performing or Energy Star windows. So this would be like your triple pane windows. And then another important thing is the positioning of windows and where the orientation of the windows. LED or Energy Star lighting, Energy Star appliances like your fridge and your washing machine and your dryer. And last but certainly not least is better insulation. So with all these different components, you're able to have an energy efficient house. It's hard to have an energy efficient house with, you could have great insulation, but if you don't have airtight construction,
single pane windows or.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of got to look at the house as a system, and that's where our experience as energy advisors really kind of we feel gives us a kind of a foot up on the on kind of what we do, and we're able to explain to the customer or the homeowner what it means to kind of think of the house as a system rather than just going in and doing installation. Our main focus, and Steve mentioned it, is that we do existing homes, and we're focused on retrofitting the attic insulation. Eventually, we have plans to grow and expand the company and get into doing spray foam and commercial construction and stuff like that. But I mean, we're just starting out. We have to start somewhere. So the thing that we found that we could make the biggest impact and do it most effectively beginning would be retrofitting in the attics. So we rely heavily on the house as a system, and kind of educating our customers on why it's important, what we do and the way we do it. So I mean, for anyone who's kind of unfamiliar with the house as a system, basically what it is your house is made up of 4 main components, and it's the outer layer, the building envelope, their inner parts or your mechanical systems, occupants, and the environment. Although they're separate from each other, your insulation, heating and cooling system, windows, doors, ventilation, exterior walls, the foundation and siding make your house operate as a multi-component system where all the components are interactive. And because your house operates as a multi-component system, sometimes energy retrofits to one component of your home can affect other components of your home in unintended ways. So kind of in a nutshell, or an example of this would be a lot of times we're working in the attic. Our biggest thing that we try to focus on is air sealing the attic. And one thing that happens when you're air sealing the attic is you're reducing air leakage into the attic. But when you're doing that, you're also increasing the humidity levels inside the house, since less water vapor is leaking up into your house through the air, because we've sealed the cracks in the top plates and penetrations and light fixtures and any basically other areas where your warm air from inside your house or conditioned air is leaking into the attic. And then this humidity is now being trapped inside your house. So the humidity can cause condensation on your windows, resulting in potential mold growth, damage from the accumulated moisture. So when we do the air sealing in an attic, it's important to understand what kind of implications that's going to have. So in explaining that to the customer, the lesson here basically is that when you change one component of the house, it can have an immediate effect on another component. Many small changes over time can also affect the balance of how the house operates as a system. So, I mean, if you're sealing up in the attic and you're kind of the way I like to explain it to our customers is a lot of times is when, most people, they don't go up into their attic and they're not climbing around in their attic and they're not looking up there. So they're not going to see any damage that may be happening up there. And we see it all the time when we go into attics, and even in newer houses, moisture is basically just leaking into the house through from your conditioned air in the house, and it creates condensation in the attic, and you end up with the sheathing on the underside of your roof begins to rot and causes mold and all kinds of stuff. Well, this might not seem important to a homeowner if they've never seen it or never even knew it existed up there or was possible. And then now we've sealed up all these air leaks, and that moisture is now, instead of being in their attic, it's in the house, and they're seeing it on their windows and stuff. They might kind of say like, "Whoa, well, you just created a big problem in our house." Well, basically, we like to think of it as we didn't really create a problem. We just moved the problem from a place where it was unseen and you didn't even know it existed, and then the damage was accumulating over time, and we brought that problem to the forefront where you can actually see it, and now you know that you have a humidity and moisture issue and you can address it. So mechanical ventilation might need to be added, or you might need to run your kitchen exhaust fan for an extra 15 minutes after you cook or have a shower, your bathroom fan, opening a window for a little bit just to kind of help expel some of that moisture. So those are the kind of things that we try to explain to the customer as how the house operates as a system. And one other thing too is, when you add insulation and you make the house more airtight, it might affect the sizing of your furnace. Your furnace might be oversized or undersized, depending on what kind of retrofits you're doing to the rest of your house. So really looking at the house as a system is the most important thing that we kind of try to stress and try to always be aware of when we're doing our retrofits.
That's that in a nutshell.
Yeah.
Big nutshell. And my daughter just joined the meeting, so I'll just be 1 second.
So I guess, what we do, and like we've explained that we're focused on retrofitting attic insulation or retrofitting attics. There's 3 main components that we address always when we're working in the attics. And the first one is the air sealing. The second one is ventilation. And the third one is increased ventilation. The air sealing, I mean, we think that it's the most important thing and also the most overlooked thing from our time as energy advisors. And this is one of the main reasons why I thought, I think it's a good idea to start an insulation company. Is going into a home one day, I was doing an energy audit, and I went down into the basement to take a picture of some insulation that was done on the basement walls, and I noticed in the corner that there was some loose fill insulation sitting down by the plumbing drain, and I was like, "Oh, this is weird." And I looked up from above there, and you can literally see right up there's a chute or a chase for the plumbing stack where the vent went up through the attic through the ceiling and into the attic, and all the way down into the basement with the drain. So the attic was insulated, and they literally blew the insulation through a hole that went all the way down into the basement before air sealing. So that was kind of an aha moment for me, saying like, well, maybe this could be done better. But anyways, and then the ventilation and increasing the insulation. I don't know if you wanted to touch on those 3 points.
I'm just going to talk a little bit about what we do. As may not be important to becoming an insulator, but owning an insulation company and doing quotes, we take a lot of time doing those quotes and explaining to customers what we're going to do. So the first thing we do is we go outside to check on the ventilation, which you can check by looking at the soffits to see if they're perforated to allow airflow to get into the attic space. What we've noticed sometimes is even if that is perforated, when we go into the attic and add the ventilation, we have to check to make sure that there has been holes drilled through it to allow the airflow to even get into the attic spaces when we add the baffles. So we do in-depth quotes and identify that and show pictures to the customers before we come back, so we know that issue has to be addressed. We don't just come in kind of blind and try and look for the problems. We try and identify them so we can be prepared to come and do the job properly. And then when we come inside the house, we like to look for our main areas of air leakage, which are your bathroom fans, your plumbing stacks, your pot lights. And in some scenarios, which we're trying to lean customers towards doing, is we like to seal the top plates, which are your interior walls that end up showing up in the attic space. So we would like to remove all the insulation so that we have a clean attic floor to work on, and we can air seal every component because we're able to see it. If the insulation is already existing and they just want it topped up, it makes it tougher for us to find all those air leakage locations, which we find to be the most important part of these three components is air sealing. So we're trying to drive that going forward because we bought a vacuum machine. We can suck it all out and start fresh. And that's the best approach.
Just to cut you off for a second there. The one thing that kind of always makes me wonder is when we go to do a quote, or a customer calls us and says, I think I need some insulation blown in my attic. And you show up and you go up into the attic and there's 4 types of insulation that have been installed in the attic. There's the original stuff. There was maybe it was some old paperback bat insulation, and then there's another layer of pink bat insulation, and then there's a layer of blown in fiberglass, and then there's a layer of blown in cellulose, and we're being called to that because the customer is saying that it's cold and drafty and we think we need more insulation. And that's kind of where we lean towards, like, well, this is not necessarily an insulation problem, but most likely it's an air leakage problem. So we, instead of just saying, oh yeah, we can add insulation, we try to identify, the root of the problem and why the house is drafty and cold, and provide solutions.
We have lots of tools to identify those, as well as being energy advisors. We have access to blower door testing, which can test the air tightness of a home. And based on our experience, we kind of know just by looking at the numbers and the size of the home, yes, this house is super drafty. There must be an issue, whether it's in the attic or in the basement headers or what have you. We know by the numbers that there is an issue with air leakage, like the house is too drafty. And then we also have thermal imaging cameras, which can help us identify cold and hot spots. And the blower doors actually accentuate in the wintertime, especially because it's drawing air from the outside into the home and exhaust out the front door. So that temperature difference is very evident, and we can show it to our customers, not only through the thermal imaging camera, but sometimes you can physically put your hand on a plumbing stack and feel the draft. So it kind of helps us that way as well.
So that's kind of there's many types of insulators. Steve kind of said we focus on the attic insulation retrofits, and there's 3 main components. We could talk about what we do, but I know that this is more about kind of providing some guidance for people who might be interested in joining the insulation industry or becoming an insulator. So just a few things that we've kind of jotted down here as far as pros and cons to actually what we do. Some of the pros are for insulation in general, it's a growing industry with a bright future ahead. If any of you paid attention to where the world's views are on climate change and where we're heading, it's definitely going to be an industry that is growing and with a bright future for many years to come. We're contributing to reducing greenhouse gas emissions, so you're making the world a better place. They're improving customers' quality of life by making their house more comfortable. They're saving them money.
Mechanical systems can last longer. Your roof can last longer if it's done properly. Lots of money saving opportunities for the customers.
Yeah, so the customers, like, one thing that we always like to hear from the customers is that their house is quieter and it's more comfortable, and that alone right there you can feel good about. So there's lots of things for pros for being an insulator. Every job is unique, so it's not like you're sitting on an assembly line which some people enjoy that, but for us, we like it because every job is unique. Some of the cons or downsides to it, it's quite physically demanding. You're working in tight spaces for sure in the attics, and they can be hot, very hot in the summertime. So, if you're not used to those hot conditions and stuff like that, it can be a little bit uncomfortable. But other than that, it's pretty good. Some of the skills and training that are required, we didn't put it on here, but it should be probably number 1 on the list, is customer service, because you're dealing with people and you're working in their homes. You have to be polite, respectful, and customer service is definitely a good skill to have. Detailed oriented, this is important because you need to know what you're looking for. Anyone can get a hose and blow insulation into an attic, but can you find the air leaks and properly seal them and do a thorough job. Basic math skills, you calculate how many bags does this 1,000 square foot attic need if I'm going from R20 to R60. So there's some little bit of math that's involved.
And with ventilation as well, you kind of want to do some calculations to see how much ventilation is needed in these homes as well. If you have to add ventilation, if there's not enough, there's some calculations there as well.
Right. And basic carpentry. So we do some, cutting and constructing of things. So you need to know how to use a tape measure and
hand
tools and stuff like that. There is no actual, it's not a regulated trade, what we do. So you don't need to go to school. You don't have to have an apprenticeship. You don't need to do 6,000 hours in an attic to become an attic insulator. But there are some good training opportunities that we definitely would recommend. Working at heights and working in confined spaces. Some of the training, we'll just kind of go on now. And this is where I kind of mentioned about NAMA Canada. They offer some great free online training courses. And we've both taken all the courses that are on here through NAMA, but you can go and the links are on here. So if you want to check them out, they're great resources. They're free to take. Anyone can take them. You could take them even just for the sake of taking them if you don't want to, just to learn. There's some great information through NAMA. So
we've recently hired a new employee and we're requiring him to pass these courses to continue on with us as well.
And then more on the spray foam side of things, there's some installer certification through Kafka, and that's just there's some requirements that if you want to be a spray foam installer that you need to take some of that. So as far as training opportunities, these are the main two that we kind of recommend if you're looking to get into the insulation industry. But other than that, I think that's pretty much it for our slide. And if you want to open it up for questions.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you. It was awesome to have the guest appearance from your daughter as well, Steve.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to bring her right in.
She wanted to see my friend, she said.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, so we're opening up for questions now. I also wanted to say thanks for including improving customers' lives as one of the pros. It's definitely something we hear a lot, is just how much of a difference it makes for people to have, like that home it's more comfortable, it's quieter, they can afford to stay there. I don't know if a lot of people would recognize that as one of the pros, but I feel like it can be pretty rewarding.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of times too, Kirsten, is when you think of like energy efficiency, most people are thinking about, the energy efficiency. Are you reducing the amount of greenhouse gases? So yeah, we're in the energy efficiency field, and that is one of our main goals. But the comfort and the improving the homeowner's lifestyle is, for a lot of people, that's more important to them than the bigger picture, and we're happy that we can provide that.
Lower their bills and make
them more comfortable, and then also at the same time, we're contributing to reducing the greenhouse gas emissions. So.
And they can get rebates too if they're eligible, which we're happy to advise them because we know how the rebate programs work, so we're very knowledgeable in that aspect as well. It's good to have that.
Awesome. And we do have actually quite a few questions here in the Q&A, so I'm going to start passing those over to you. So the first one here, actually, so Daniela, I saw your hand up. If you wanted to ask it, I can unmute you, but no pressure there. So the first question is from Daniela. Is there a difference between an energy advisor and an energy auditor?
No. So there's just two terms. Like a certified energy advisor is through Natural Resources Canada, and we perform the EnerGuide Home Evaluations. So there's there's a few different terms that get tossed around, but an energy auditor and a certified energy advisor, they're the same thing, unless I'm mistaken. But from what we know, yeah.
Cool. That keeps it simple. Another question here. So I understand, between you two, you have a few different certifications, you've done different training, and you touched on it a little bit in the presentation, but besides the two that you listed with NAMA and Kafka, is there any other training that you did to get your certifications, and where did you do that training?
So we relied heavily on our training as energy advisors, and it's quite unique how we were energy advisors first, and then we opened an insulation company, and we basically took our training and our skills from energy advisors, and we applied them directly to what we do in our customers' homes. The training for an energy advisor, it's very focused and thorough, and it's focused on the house as a system, and that's kind of our philosophy and what we use when we're doing the work. So it was kind of funny how we were talking about starting our insulation company and looking for training options and trying to see what we could do, and that's how I found out about NAMA. Was I'm on Google, like, okay, training for insulation contractors, and first things that come up was the stuff from NEMA. So we start clicking on it, and it was a Saturday night one night, and I'm looking and open up the first module, and I start going through the modules, and I'm like, this is very, very similar stuff. And it's basically like the NEMA stuff that they offer. It's very, very similar to the, and a lot of it is directly from Natural Resources Canada that NEMA uses from they have some guides on keeping the heat in, is one of the cool guides that NRCan's put together. And a lot of the training that NEMA uses, they kind of take bits and pieces from NRCan's training and NRCan's training for energy advisors, and they implemented it into their own training that was kind of more geared towards insulation, whereas the energy advisor training kind of takes everything, and it's quite in depth for the energy advisor. But that's the energy advisor training is what we kind of was our stepping stone, building blocks.
Awesome. Yeah. And I'm seeing Joseph in the chat as well saying it helped him pass his exam. So it sounds like, and I love NEMA. I think that their stuff is great. So more shout out to NEMA.
Yeah, no, that's great stuff. And for it to be free, like it's awesome. And so it was funny because I started doing these trainings through NEMA, and once I passed the course, I had to find out like who put this stuff together, because I thought it was great, and I thought it needed to be something that every insulator should have to pass. But it's not mandatory. There's no mandatory training. So I mean, there's it's a little bit of an issue where, like, one of the things I mentioned before is we go into attics and there's 4 different layers of insulation in the attic, and I think that if there was a little bit better training on the industry as a whole, that we wouldn't see that as much.
Some regulations or something.
And yeah, I mean, some basic training that was mandatory. So I called NEMA, and I spoke to, I think it was Jillian was her name, and she said, oh yeah, Andy is the guy who put this stuff together. And she's like, do you want his phone number? I said, absolutely. So I called Andy and I said, you know what, Andy, like, I'm an energy advisor, I'm opening an installation company, and I think this training that you've put together, like, it should be mandatory for all installation contractors. And he's like, Steve, thank you so much for saying that. And he's like, you're going in the right direction. And I've kind of leaned on Andy a little bit for kind of look up to him as a bit of a mentor, because he's been around the block in the energy efficiency industry, and there's lots of good teaching opportunities.
We're sponges and we're energy nerds. So yeah. any more stuff that you have, give it to us, and we'll take it to work.
Yeah.
Awesome. And a few more questions on like the nitty-gritty side of things. Do you have relationships with manufacturers, or do you deal with building supply dealers only?
Building supply. We just deal directly with a local company called Teens, is where we get all our building materials from at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
That was one of the tough things when we first started, was with the COVID, when the supply chain issues, and I'd reached out to some different manufacturers about how I can get it and where I can get my hands on it, and it was very hard, and it was kind of frustrating actually, because here we are, new, gung-ho, ready to get into this insulation industry, and we want to do things efficiently and all that, but nobody was going to give us insulation. So it was a little bit frustrating at first, but we were able to source some, and we've been using the same product since. So it's been good, and we've had a steady supply of it, so it's good.
Awesome. Yeah, and kind of along the same vein, so you might have had the same problems, but do you own your blower equipment, or do you rent it?
We own it.
We own it all. Yeah.
As soon as we started, we found a truck with a blower machine, and we just bought it. Going forward, we might look into leasing, but it all depends on, we got to look at our books and kind of see what's most cost effective for us. But for the first starting out, we definitely bought it.
Awesome. So Joseph has some questions here about, so you're energy auditors initially, and now you're working in the insulation industry. So, I think, so just to summarize, Joseph is wondering, when you have that energy auditor background and now you're working on the more contractor side of things, what are the rules there as an energy auditor? I'm assuming you're not doing the audits and then recommending your own business to the customer. So how can someone who's maybe looking to switch or has both those backgrounds, how do they navigate being an energy auditor and a contractor?
What we've done is we've outsourced the energy audits to another company. So we're very knowledgeable of the program. We know all what you have to have, like receipt wise, timing wise. And then there's local companies all over London that do energy advisors. They can pick their own if they're looking for a name. We obviously work with a company that's on the list. So they can go to Enbridge's website, they have a rebate program.
Or when you go to the Greener Homes grant,
you get a list of advisors.
Yeah, it gives you options on who you can choose. So we leave it up to the homeowner to really get the energy audit, and we give them a phone number for an energy auditing company. And if they want to use them, great. And if not, then I mean, they can use whoever they want, really.
But yeah, we kind of keep it separate businesses. So
awesome. Yeah, that makes sense. And then more questions on the entrepreneurship side of things. Did you get any grants when you started up your business? And if so, were there any resources that were provided with that grant? Things like training or marketing, or another question really similar, so I'll just throw it in at the same time. Was there anything that really helped you in getting your business started? Or was there something, maybe there wasn't anything and you wish there was something that had been there to support you through it? So just anything that helped you get started. That's
more accurate. We kind of pursued grants and said what was available to us because of COVID and how we could get a loan, interest-free loaner, what we could do. But
there was something through the BDC, and there's a program that definitely anyone that's looking to become an entrepreneur, there's a program through the BDC. It's called Futurepreneur, and it's for young entrepreneurs. I think there's an age requirement to participate in it, and we looked at going through that, and we actually went through all that. We did the business plan and everything that they required, and then when it got time for them to make a decision after we'd done all this work, they said, oh, well, we don't do loans for vehicles, because we were looking to get a loan for the machine and the truck. And then, so, I mean, yes, there are some stuff for entrepreneurs and grants and stuff out there, but we didn't take advantage of them. And as far as if there was anything that we would have liked to have, I mean,
absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, the hardest thing was trying to get the business started during the middle of COVID. So with restrictions and stuff that we didn't really know what was coming, or what, if we were going to get shut down, or one of the things that, construction workers were able to continue working and home renovations were considered essential, but the rebate programs were shut down. So Enbridge paused the rebate program just out of abundance of caution, but construction was still happening. So a lot of homeowners were kind of handcuffed. Like if they were going to be doing energy efficient upgrades, they could get the work done, but they couldn't get an energy audit done to take advantage of the rebate. So there was a few things that we had to kind of navigate with COVID when we were starting, but
yeah, I cannot imagine. It'd be quite an unpredictable time to be starting a business. You guys for going
pretty stressful, but we got through it. So
yeah, awesome. So we've got just a few minutes left. So if anybody else does have one more question, I think we've got time for another one, but not seeing any others in the Q&A. I have one question of my own. So for folks who are on this call, they're thinking about going into this sector, they're trying to figure out what's the next step, where should I be looking? If you're looking to hire an insulator for your business, are you looking more for training or work experience?
I mean, training would be great. It's hard to say, because work experience is good, but depends. If you were working and you never had the proper training, well, that work experience might really mean nothing to us. I mean, like I said, anyone can take a hose and bring it up into an attic and turn on the blower and shoot the insulation into the attic. So you could have been doing that for 15 years or 10 years or however long, but
correctly.
The training, I think, is the most important thing. And that's why when we just hired our first employee, never had any installation experience, but willingness to learn and willingness to, take some training. And the training's free too. So the training that we're offering and the training through NEMA, it's free. So, I mean, the training is definitely, I think, more important than the work experience.
Willing to be trained is probably the best answer to that question. You can have experience, but you have to be willing to be trained the way we want you to do it, which is the proper way, in our opinion, of how to do it.
Awesome. Yeah, it's always great to have someone who's just ready to learn.
Yeah.
And we have one more question here in the Q&A, so I'm going to give it to you with just 30 seconds, quick rapid fire answer. How did you start to reach out to clients? So how did you first connect with people and start marketing when you had, this business started from nothing?
Facebook was basically our biggest thing. Yeah. And to be honest, once we relied heavily on kind of like a word of mouth too. So we tried to do a good job for our customers, and we
use our friends to repost things we post on Facebook just to get the ball rolling. And then our reputation so far has been pretty good. Google reviews are very important. The more people see our Google reviews, 5-star reviews is huge.
Awesome. Cool. Okay, so we're coming up on 5:45, so I'm going to wrap things up. Steve, I know you've got two, kids who are looking for your time right now, so
Yeah,
we'll close it down. So thank you so much for sharing your story, for telling everyone these insights. I think lots of folks are really benefiting from hearing this. And also a huge thanks to everyone who joined us today. Thank you for your great questions. Feel free to, reach out to me after the call. And if you have any more questions, I can probably put you in touch with either of the Steves here.
Absolutely.
yeah. If anyone has
Awesome.
any questions, feel free to send us an email and we'd be happy to answer it.
Perfect. And one final thank you to our sponsors, Natural Resources Canada and Electricity Human Resources Canada. And with that, we'll have this recording up soon for folks, and have an awesome evening, everybody.
Thanks, Kirsten.
Thank you.
Awesome. We're all done here. So take care, everyone.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye.